Welcome back, everyone. This is Tout Bright, helping you negotiate higher salary, pay raises, and promotions. Today, I have an amazing guest, Julia Becker Collins. She is a Chief Operation Officer for Vision Advertising, and she has an incredible journey through her career. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
And where are you calling in from?
I live outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Normally, our company is based in a regular office, but right now we're all remote. So you are looking at the headquarters, which used to be our second bedroom in our house, but is now an office.
Yeah, it's everyone keeps postponing those deadlines or trying to reinforce them, and I think we're just going to have to accept that this is, for the near future at least, this is
Yeah,
life.
yeah. We're pretty much remote at this point, and that's just how it's going to be. We're small, we're pretty much cloud-based, so it's okay.
Right? It's okay, and I think that's a great message that a lot of companies are now forced to reckon with, is that it's okay to work
Right,
remote.
great.
Very
So,
cool. Yeah,
yeah.
so let's start off a little bit about your first job and whether you negotiated for your first job. Um,
Uh, yeah. So my first job after college was as a um, assistant property manager. Um, I absolutely was not qualified for that job, other than that I had been a resident advisor, so an RA in college. I was 22. And I really just needed a job. I needed a job. That job had nothing to do with my degree. I just needed something that paid the bills. And I was coming in as a temp. They had originally placed me as a temp. And so I did not really have any opportunities to negotiate. It was like, here's the permanent position. They want to buy out your temp contract. Do you want it or not? And I was like, does it come with health insurance? That's the primary question at 22 years old. And they're like, yes, it does. And I was like, great, done, sold. And I remember I had told my college advisor, I was like, I got a job. It's so exciting. And I mean, this is a while ago. And she said to me, she's like, well, does it pay? I think she asked me if it paid $30,000 a year. And I was like, no, it doesn't pay $30,000 a year, but it comes with health insurance. And she's like, okay, well, we'll just see how this goes.
there's enthusiasm for you.
Right. I was like, listen, it pays my rent and it has health insurance. So it was better than I was yesterday. You know, it's, you're 22. What do you know?
That's crazy. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. What was the first job that you felt comfortable negotiating, if any?
Um, I I think the first position I was in where I felt comfortable negotiating was, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years after that. I was at a large nonprofit in Boston, and I came in as an event manager. Again, not with a ton of experience, other than being really good at managing events in college. Um, so I kind of sold myself on the position, and they were great at thinking outside the box when they hired me, which is something I always encourage young people to do, is to don't just look at all the requirements of a job posting, look at, how you can fulfill the job in other creative ways and sell yourself on the position. And, you don't have to meet all of the qualifications. And so I sold myself on the position, and I remember they offered me the position. And again, this is so long ago, but it was something like $35,000 a year. And it was a long commute for me, but I knew it would be a great opportunity. And I was like, well, I really need to be something more in the range of, I think I negotiated it up to like 37, 38. And they were fine with that, which I remember thinking I really should have asked for more. But I was excited I asked for anything, and then I got it, which is turned out to be great because I was there for, I think, almost 6 years. And then as you learn, whatever you start at in a position is what your cost of living increases are based off of, and any raises you end up are based off of. So that first initial salary is really where you have your greatest opportunity for, the jumping off point to make more money later on.
That's incredible. So talk me through like how did you negotiate that 7K like increase?
Oh, well, it wasn't really a 7, it was like a 3K increase. And I was
3K?
like 35.
Oh, it
Like,
was 35. Okay, I thought you said
yeah,
30.
yeah. I think I said, I mean, again, this is a number of years ago, but I think I said something to the effect of, you know, I'm really looking to be more in the range of a total compensation package looking like $40,000, knowing that they weren't going to come up to 40, kind of classic negotiating, and thinking that we would end up somewhere in the middle. I don't have some kind of strong business background. I didn't go to college for business. I'm not an amazing poker player. I don't have any of those skills, but I just, my logical brain, I'm very, very logical. My logical brain was like, hey, I bet you this would work. Let's see if it works. And at the time, again, this is so long ago, it's not like there were all these articles out there telling you how to negotiate for your salary. I just was like, well, let's try this. Let's see what happens. And it worked. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money more, but a couple $1,000s more starting, A, is a big deal, especially if you're on the lower end of the pay scale. And B, it makes a big deal when you make more money over the next few years. And to somebody not making a lot of money, a few $1,000s makes a huge impact versus when you're making 6 figures, a few $1,000s is not as significant of an impact. So I think I just like ripped the Band-Aid off in that final conversation, was like, I really want this position. This is a great position. I really see myself here. And I just talked about how excited I was. And I just threw it out there and said, this is really something that would be helpful for me. And like I think the thing I always say to myself that has really served me incredibly well, and that I always say to the people I mentor, is, what's the worst that happens? I think people don't negotiate because, men and women, but I think people don't negotiate because they're afraid that the person's going to rescind the offer. And, as somebody that's now on this side of the negotiating table, that I'm in charge of all the hiring and how much we pay everybody. And I mean, 99% of the time, that's never going to happen. They've offered you the job. They want you to take the job. They're excited for you. Hiring is an arduous, terrible process on both sides of the table. So once they've come down to the person they want to hire, they're not going to say, never mind, we're going to start over, or, pick their second person, go to the next choice just because you started a negotiation. It's more about how you start the negotiation. It's kind of getting over your own fear of it, I guess, is the best way of saying it.
That's incredible. So you were there for, you said 6 or 7 years?
6 years, I believe.
6 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you had kind of gained that like kind of foundation of like, oh, I'm worth it,
Yeah.
did you start negotiating at every job interview after that, now that you kind of like found out it kind of worked?
Yeah, I did. One of the reasons I left that job, I loved that job, and I'm actually still in contact with the organization and they do great work. But one of the reasons I left is I kind of got to a financial position with them where I was like, yeah, I really need to be making X and you're only willing to come up to Y. And that doesn't work for me financially. And so I'm going to start looking for something else. And that was it for me. I really couldn't make $40,000 a year anymore. It just wasn't feasible. And so it also wasn't, a job where I was growing anymore in my career. And so it really had to be something. I either needed to make, more money, have, some kind of advancement path, or, need to be learning more. They need to give me mentorship. Something had to change. And none of those things were available to me at that point. I had kind of hit the ceiling on what was possible. And I couldn't do that in that position. So I started to look for something else. So
Okay.
I moved on, and I definitely negotiated from there. I found that one of the big things was that I needed to be negotiating not just for salary, but for non-monetary benefits as well, especially in the nonprofit world. So I was at a nonprofit where I definitely, I had a really transparent conversation with the hiring manager about what their financial capabilities were. And they had a hard ceiling because they were a small nonprofit, and that's fine. And I knew that going in. And I said, okay, I'm really interested in this position. They had already offered it to me. So I said, what else, can we talk about vacation time? Because if you're going into it and you really want the position and you understand the financial limitations, you need to think about the whole compensation package. And that's really where I came from when I was in nonprofits, was like, okay, so they have X amount to spend. That's it. That's all they have. But they have other things they can be giving me. So if I am willing to bend on the money, maybe they can bend on vacation time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I continue to do with negotiations in nonprofits. And that's definitely the advice I give people to this day, is don't just think about, how much you can negotiate in terms of salary. Think about the whole package. When you look at, job descriptions, look at how much vacation time they're giving you. Look at, is it remote work? Is it a schedule you like? Is it, all the things they're giving you, et cetera, et cetera. And I think those are all really important points, especially these days.
There you go. Did you ever find a mentor? So a lot of us, this is just our parents growing up, but like someone who you really liked their style and they were helping you negotiate?
Yeah. So I had a mentor. Actually, I found it at that position at that nonprofit I was just mentioning. And she really took me under her wing, and she said, you are like me, and that you have a big personality and you really think big picture, but you're also good at diving into the details, and you don't have any fear, and you're great at thinking about big change and what's best for the organization. And you can talk about money, and you're not scared about talking about money, which is a big thing, right? It's not just negotiating with your salary, but asking for donations, sales, et cetera. It's unusual usually for women. They have a lot of fear around money. Unfortunately, that's what we're socialized to believe. And she really sat me down and was like, I want to help you be heard in situations where you're the only woman in the room. And I want to help you say the same thing in a new way so that you can have just as forceful a voice, but have it constructed in a way where, your ideas are, heard better at a table, where your pitch for a program is taken on, where your salary negotiation tactics aren't abrasive, especially if you're sitting across from a man. So kind of all of those things. And she just was incredibly helpful. I really got to a point where I stayed at that position just to work for her. When you find somebody who's really amazing to work for, you really have to kind of lean into that. And when she left that organization, it was time to move on, because I couldn't work there anymore without her there. So, and then I made the switch to corporate, and I definitely took what she helped me understand with me, and I negotiated hard at my next job. I was the only woman in a room full of men in senior leadership, and they, were very clear about the job description. And I said, this is what I'm looking for financially in order for me to leave where I am, et cetera, take on this new role that you're creating into a difficult position that you're telling me is going to be difficult. Here's where I need to be financially. I just really went hard on the finances because I knew that I was moving from, nonprofits where there's just much more of a limited budget to corporate where that is not the situation at all. And if I'm going to make the switch to corporate, this is my chance to not only at this company, but at future companies have a much stronger negotiation point. So that really, I kind of made a hard turn at that point. And it was, kind of the same tactic of like, I'm really interested in this position. I think I'd be great here. I'm so excited to join the team. Thank you so much, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm really looking for, a financial compensation in the range of, I think it was like $70,000. So I was going from something like 40 to 70, which is a significant jump, but I just did it. You kind of have to like say, yes, this is scary, but in Massachusetts, where I'm based, they can't ask you what you used to make. So only you know. So you just have to put yourself mentally into that. I now make this amount of money and I'm worth this amount of money and I'm going to ask for this amount of money. And so I got that. And again, I thought I should have asked for more because I didn't put up much of a fight. And I then went and was there for about a year. And then I moved on to the company I'm at now, where from the beginning, I had a very transparent conversation with the CEO about, here's what I'm looking for, because I didn't need to leave the company I was at previously. And it was much more of a, if you want me to come and join Vision Advertising and take on this huge leadership role and really take over the whole company, here is everything I'm looking for from like meeting number one, not even like, here's the job offer. But that's, I feel like you need to be in a very senior position to be having that conversation early, because you need to be saying something incredibly clear about your wants and needs very early on, so that you kind of have all your cards on the table and saying, if you really want me to switch positions, because there's a certain amount of pain in switching positions and switching companies and kind of all these things, here's where I'm going to need to be. And that was helpful because it kind of set the tone for all of the conversations we had. We had a number of meetings about the position, and it was helpful because it was just like, okay, all the cards are on the table. Okay, so we can keep having these conversations because what you're asking for isn't out of the realm of possibility. And then when we got to the final conversation around like, the job is yours, here's what we as a company can do for you, let's create something that works. It wasn't this scary thing you had to jump over. It was, here's what I'm looking for, here's, et cetera, et cetera. So I think your tactic really has to change as you move up the scale and depending on the industry you're in.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great. What are some of the things now that you have the benefit of hindsight, looking back and like, oh, I should have done that. So like you mentioned the feeling of like you should have asked for more multiple times. Is that kind of like a just a nagging doubt in the back of your head, or do you actually wish that you had?
No, I mean, I don't think it's a nagging doubt. It's so many years ago, but I think it's a helpful reminder when I mentor women now that are earlier on in their careers, because, I'm mentoring a woman right now who's in her late 20s, and she's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. I can just keep making $60,000. And I'm like, yeah, but I just turned 40. And the amount you make when you're 27 is directly tied to how much you make when you're 40. And it's hard to see when you're in your 20s, but I have the better perspective of looking backwards. And I can say to you that it is 100% linked. It doesn't matter if you change companies or careers or move across the country. because in your brain, that's how much you're worth. And so that's how much you ask for. So if you push that forward $10,000, $5,000, then suddenly you've internalized how much you're financially worth. And then you can ask for more. I think a lot of it is a mental boundary that we put on ourselves and say, okay, well, I'm not worth more than that, but you are. And it's, when I say I should have asked for more, it's more like, oh, I didn't play the game well enough. They folded too quickly. I should have asked for more money. So it's, it's a little bit of that because I really enjoy negotiating. But it's also that it gives me really good hindsight in how I can help people now,
Yeah, that sounds great. So there's a lot of like some great studies out there where they have women and men do the exact same scripts,
Yep.
and then they have audience rate them to see if it would like working with them, if they would hire them, all that kind of thing. And they find that even though they're doing the exact same script, the women score lower, right? They're saying the exact same thing. So what have you found when you're talking to these people works for you? Like the conversation. So you mentioned multiple times, like this is the range that I'm looking at. Is that how you phrased it, or do you say, in the industry, or any like
I
research?
don't say in the industry. I never say in the industry. So I know the studies you're talking about, and I 100% understand. Like, so some of it's implicit bias, and some of it's just like we treat women differently. And if a man says one thing and a woman says another thing, she's a bitch, and a guy's assertive. Fine. Like, let's all just hold hands and agree that that's how the society is constructed. But the other part of this is that you, the employee, need to read the room, need to read how people are going to receive things. So what I have learned to do over the years is I don't say anything about what anybody else is getting paid. This is different advice than somebody else is going to give, but this is what I do. And this is the advice I give to people that I help. I don't talk about what other people get paid because I'm not other people. I'm talking about my merits, right? I don't talk about what the industry is paying because at the end of the day, nobody cares because the industry isn't paying you. I don't talk about, well, based on my research, I tried that once. It didn't go anywhere. What I have found to be successful is talking about what you need in order to feel both appreciated in the role and that you're excited to take on the role. So excited to take on the role in that if you're coming into a new role or getting promoted, so you're taking on new responsibilities, or if you are asking for a raise and you're already inside of a role, then you're talking more about feeling appreciated. And that can be a scary thing because you're saying that money equals appreciation, but it can. You can associate how much you're being paid by a company with how much you feel appreciated. That's okay. That's an okay feeling to have. And you can validate that for yourself. So when you talk about it, so I like to use prefacing in my negotiations, whether it's negotiating in sales or whether it's negotiating for how much you're making, prefacing is your friend. So that's kind of setting up the foundation of what you're talking about to the person you're talking about it with. So rather than walking into a room and being like, hi, Bob, I want to make X amount of dollars because I did the research and that's not helping. You need to kind of set the stage for the person. So, hey, I feel like I've loved working here, and, in order for me to continue to feel appreciated in this larger role, expanded role, much larger role than I originally took on, however you're going to say it, I really need to be at a base salary compensation of in the range of $80,000. I'm throwing numbers out there. And the reason I phrase it like that, base salary total compensation is sometimes roles include commission, bonuses, etc. So we're talking about your base salary. We're not talking about everything, right? Base salary, and then total compensation is, are we talking about vacation and everything else? So you could say like, I'm really looking to be in the range of $80,000 for my base salary. Or you could say, I'm looking to be in range of $80,000 for my total compensation package. And when you say your total compensation package, that includes your bonus, your this, your that. You need to be as clear as possible. You need to think about the words you're using. Do you want how much you're asking for to include your bonus? Do you want the words you're asking for to include your commission rate? Do you want, like, what are you asking for? And the reason I always say in the range of is because it says I'm willing to negotiate. It's not saying I'm a hard line, this amount of money. But what you're saying is, I've thought very clearly about this, and this is how much I want, except I'm willing to talk about it. So it's just a softer approach, which is, for good or for bad, using gendered language, saying I'm a woman, so I need to come in soft. I didn't make the rules. I just know how to use the rules. So that's kind of how it is.
Interesting. So now that you're on the flip side and you're managing hires and budgets, for salaries and things like that, what are the things that you've noticed as people try to negotiate their pay raises, now that they're in a position that you're like, or that you're like, that was good, I'll actually give it to you?
Absolutely. So I've had the full range of experiences. I've had really unfortunate experiences of people asking me for raises, and it just was very not well thought out. And I'm happy to tell you one of those stories. And then I've had people do it really, really well. One of the big pieces of advice, again, that I always say is please read the room. Do we as a company have the money to pay you that raise? Are we having a good meeting to start with? How did you set the whole thing up? Is the person you're asking in a good mood that day? Kind of all of those things, right? So I'll give you an example of somebody asking for a raise that did not go well. We were in an annual review meeting, which I think is the time when a lot of people are like, I'm going to ask for a raise. Fine. So, sorry, that's my dog outside the door. So she said, it was not a great meeting. She was not doing a great job at her job. We had a long closed door conversation about, here's your performance improvement plan. And if you're in corporate, a performance improvement plan or a PIP is really like, you need to fix these things. Otherwise, we're going to have a serious problem, etc. So we had a very long meeting about that. And she really sat there stone-faced and said, with not much feedback, which was concerning to me because I really wanted her to be successful. And she said, I get to the end and I say, do you have any questions? Is there anything else you want to talk about? I'm really trying to pull it out of her. How can I help you, etc. And she said, well, I came prepared with some thoughts. And I said, okay, great. And she launches into a whole thing that she obviously had come pre-prepared with about how she wanted a raise. And so we've just sat through an hour and a half of you are not doing a great job at your job because of a 5-page document of reasons and how you need to improve that, in which you did not participate in the conversation. And now when you have decided to participate in the conversation, you are asking for a raise. So that is obviously a problem. So I said, okay, how much are you looking for? She gave me a hard number. And then I said, okay, and why do you believe that you should get a raise? Because I thought maybe she's seeing something I'm not seeing. I'm trying to have her participate in this conversation. And it basically boiled down to that she felt that she had done her job. And it wasn't that she had, grown her role or taken on a huge new body of work or really brought in X amount of dollars, whatever. I was really open to things at that point. I was giving her all of the opportunities to have this conversation with me, but that she had done her job. And so if there is an example of crashing and burning when you're asking for a raise, that this one is really kind of the prime example. And I tell this story often because I think what happens a lot of times is that, in the industry, especially young women are told, you should ask for that raise. X percentage of women don't ask for a raise. You should ask for the raise. Here's the 5 steps. And then young women digest that and just think, okay, I'll follow these 5 steps and I'll get the raise. And that is just not how it happens. It's really much more that you need to read the room. Does the company even have money to pay you the raise? How do you ask for the raise? When do you ask for the raise? Are you owed any kind of extra money? How are you doing at your job, et cetera, et cetera? Like that situation was absolutely not when to ask for a raise. And when you are asked, you're almost always going to be asked, if you don't present it already, why do you believe you're, owed this or do this or, deserving of this raise? If you don't present it in your initial, presentation, you need to be able to say, because I brought in 150% higher, blah, 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 or I, have, grown in the role by 200% by taking on the following roles. And I didn't initially have direct reports, but now I do. And concrete examples. What doesn't ever work is to say, I have done my job. Because yes, you have, otherwise you wouldn't have one. So it's kind of a great example of lots of ways not to do it. And maybe your viewers are thinking, I'm really hard-nosed, but that's how it really is. It's a really like, don't do it that way. Please don't do it that way. It's not going to work out well for you. An example of it going really, really well is I had somebody who worked for me a couple of years ago sit down with me, and we've since changed from annual reviews to monthly sit downs. They had been with me, I think, for like a year and a half, and we sat down and we had been talking for a little bit about growing their role. And, I wanted to give them more responsibility. I was thinking they could do A, B, and C. It was a conversation. It's not just here's your new role. It's what are you thinking? How do you think about this? Let's move this away from you. Okay, let's make a decision by this date. What do you think about this new title, et cetera, et cetera? So we had this conversation and he liked the idea and we had, back and forth. Okay, great. I like this idea. Okay, that title's fine. I don't really care. He didn't have feelings about the title. He didn't care. Fine, great. And I came to him and, he said to me, he's like, for a larger role, I would really need a larger salary. He didn't come to me saying, I'm going to want to make X amount of dollars, but I was having a conversation with him about a promotion. So I am going and saying, well, I'm giving you a promotion. And, in this time as a company, we have the money to give you more money. So I'm going in knowing that we're going to give you more money. So I'm anticipating you're going to ask for more money because it's ridiculous if I don't anticipate that. So he's just saying, I'm going to need a larger salary. And he said, I just love to know what you're thinking. He just started a conversation, which is, I think, one of the healthiest ways to do it. It doesn't work in every instance, to be fair. What kind of relationship do you have with your boss? How big is the company, et cetera, et cetera. But in this instance, we were able to have a really good, transparent conversation. I lead my team with a lot of transparency. And we just talked about that you're making this now as your base salary. I am the leader, as the leader of the company, I'm thinking something more in this range. What are you thinking about that? And he said, okay, well, how about something more in this range? And we kind of had a discussion and it went really well. And, I was really happy to give him a significant raise. So it's just, how do you approach it, I think? And have you done the work? But are you willing to have a conversation? Have you come prepared? Are you, going to just say I'm owed this? That's not going to work out well. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Anything else you want to talk about through your personal experience, like a story that you wish you had known or talked about?
I'm trying to think. Not off the top of my head. I would just say I'm having a conversation with another woman that I'm mentoring right now, and she just moved into a new role, and she really wishes she had negotiated when she was promoted, and she didn't. She just said, okay, I want to make sure I understand the, obligations of the new role. And she said, and what does the new role pay? And they said, I don't remember what it pays, X, Y, and Z, $50,000 or something a year. And here are the benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, okay. And now it's 6 months later and her role's growing again. And I'm helping her and I'm saying, okay, let's just have the conversation about that. You should have negotiated. B, maybe now is the time that you sit down and say, okay, I've been in this role for 6 months and I have done the following things. When can we talk about an increase in my salary? Because I've proven myself, this was a new role for the company, like framing the conversation differently. She definitely is having a mental hurdle on, oh, I deserve more. There's definitely that mental hurdle. And she had said to me, well, maybe it's fine because I can just ask for more later. And what I've consistently said to her and what I consistently say to everyone is, you are always at a better negotiation point when you start higher. So if she's making 50 now, but she had actually started at 55 and she's asking for a 5% raise, that's going to be 5% on top of 55 instead of 50. So you just always want to come in as, start as high as you can in terms of the ability to start at, a salary range. And there's nothing wrong with asking for more money.
Yes, yeah, and the impact it has, I mean, I've seen multiple different studies that claim anywhere, like I did a rough math myself, and it's anywhere like $500,000 to $1.5 million over the life of your career that a 5K difference at your first job makes,
Yep. Yeah.
Some of it has to do with like average compounding, but there's a lot more to it. So it's incredibly impactful just negotiating that 5K.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I went from making $29,000 at my first job to $35,000 to, now I'm in the six figures. So I made significant jumps because I wanted to and felt I was deserving of it, but that is not the typical thing that people do. You really are in a better position if you get yourself to a higher place always. You just are gonna always make more money over the lifetime of your career, like you said, if you bump yourself up higher. And you just need to remember that you are worthy of it. You are worthy of that money. And that is okay to want.
There you go. Amen to that. All right, this is Julia Becker Collins. She is the Chief Operating Officer of Vision Advertising. I will have her links to her LinkedIn page and her website in the description below. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. This was great.